The New York evening was crisp, the kind of chill that bites at your nose and makes you bury your chin deep into a scarf. The city was alive, as it always is, with the constant hum of taxis and the blur of yellow lights streaking down the avenues. Standing tall amidst the concrete chaos was the Chatwell Hotel. It wasn't just a building. It was a fortress of luxury, a reported $380 million monument to high society right in the heart of the city. From the outside, it glowed with a warm, inviting light, but inside, it was a different world. It was a world where money wasn't just spent, it was displayed like a trophy. The entrance to the hotel was a theater of its own. A long red carpet rolled out from the curb, flanked by brass stanchions and velvet ropes that seemed to whisper, "Keep out unless you belong." A line of luxury cars. Black sedans and shiny sports cars pulled up one by one. Drivers in uniforms rushed to open doors, and people spilled out onto the sidewalk. They were wrapped in expensive furs, wearing glittering jewelry that caught the streetlights, and laughing with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing everyone is watching. They were the beautiful people, the important people, the ones who had reservations and tables waiting for them. Standing guard at the main doors was a tall, broad-shouldered man who looked like he had been carved out of stone. He wore a sharp suit that fit his muscular frame perfectly, an earpiece curling almost invisibly around his ear, and a gaze that scanned the crowd like a hawk. He took his job very seriously. To him, the hotel wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a sanctuary that had to be protected from the chaos of the street. His job was to decide, in a split second, who belonged inside and who didn't. It was a power he enjoyed. Into this scene of high glamour walked a figure who seemed to have stepped out of a different movie entirely. He was walking alone, without a single bodyguard or an assistant in sight. He didn't step out of a chauffeured car. He just appeared on the sidewalk, coming from the direction of the subway station, carrying a heavy-looking duffel bag slung over one shoulder. It was Keanu Reeves. But to the people bustling past him, lost in their own world of champagne and loud music, he was just another guy on the street. He was dressed in his usual uniform, a well-worn dark leather jacket that had seen better days, a faded t-shirt underneath, comfortable jeans, and a pair of scuffed boots. On his head he wore a simple baseball cap pulled low to shield his eyes. He looked tired. His shoulders were slumped slightly under the weight of his bag, and there was a weariness in his stride that suggested he had been traveling for hours. As he got closer to the hotel entrance, the contrast between him and the other guests became almost comical. A woman in a sparkling gown stepped out of a limousine just a few feet away, surrounded by photographers shouting her name. Keanu walked past her, unnoticed, like a ghost drifting through a party he wasn't invited to. He didn't look at the cameras, he didn't look at the flashing lights. He just looked toward the doors of the hotel, his mind clearly focused on one thing, getting to his room. Keanu loved this hotel. It was one of the few places in the city where he could actually find some peace. He owned a suite here, a private space where he could retreat from the madness of being one of the most famous actors on the planet. He didn't use the hotel for parties or to see and be seen. He used it to sleep, to read scripts, and to just be himself. He expected the usual routine, a polite nod at the desk, a quick swipe of his key card, and the silence of the elevator right up. But tonight, the routine was about to break. As Keanu stepped up to the curb, dodging a taxi that honked loudly at a pedestrian, the tall security guard turned his attention toward him. The guard's eyes narrowed. He saw the scruffy jacket. He saw the duffel bag that looked like it was stuffed with gym clothes, not designer luggage. He saw the lack of entourage. In the guard's mind, the alarm bells started ringing immediately. This didn't look like a guest. This looked like trouble. This looked like someone who was going to try to sneak in, maybe ask for money, or cause a scene for the rich people inside. Keanu adjusted the strap of his bag and kept walking. He moved with a quiet fluidity, his head down, trying to make himself as small as possible. He just wanted to get inside. He didn't notice the guard straightening his posture, stepping forward to block the path. He didn't see the look of dismissal on the man's face. To Keanu, this was just the lobby of his home away from home. To the guard, he was an interloper who needed to be stopped before he ruined the atmosphere. The noise of the city seemed to fade into the background as the distance between the actor and the doors closed. The automatic glass doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the pristine white marble lobby inside. It looked warm and quiet, a promised land of comfort after a long day. Keanu took a deep breath, ready to leave the cold air behind, and stepped onto the red carpet that led to the entrance. He was just feet away from freedom when a shadow fell across his path. The guard didn't shout. He didn't scream. He simply stepped in front of the doors, his large frame filling the space, effectively forming a human wall. Keanu stopped in his tracks, confused for a second. He looked up, his eyes visible from under the brim of his cap. He expected a greeting. He expected a "good evening, mister" Reeves. Instead, he was met with a cold, hard stare that said he wasn't welcome here. The guard looked him up and down, taking in the scruffy clothes and the heavy bag. There was no recognition in his eyes, only suspicion. To him, this wasn't the star of the Matrix. This was just a tired guy in a leather jacket who looked like he didn't have a reservation for a cup of coffee, let alone a room in a $380 million hotel. The tension between the two men hung in the cold night air, invisible but heavy, like a storm cloud about to break. Keanu stood there, patient and waiting, while the guard prepared to deliver a verdict that would shock everyone watching. The guard stood like a statue, his feet planted firmly on the pristine marble of the entranceway. He didn't just step in front of Keanu. He broadened his shoulders, making himself look even bigger, like a bouncer at an exclusive club who had seen it all. The air between them was thick with unspoken judgment. The guard looked down at the man in the baseball cap, his eyes scanning the worn leather jacket and the heavy duffel bag with undisguised suspicion. To him, this was a classic scenario, someone trying to blend in, hoping to slip past security for a free drink or a warm place to rest. "Can I help you?" the guard asked. His voice was loud and carried across the sidewalk. It wasn't a friendly question, it was a challenge. The tone suggested that he had already decided the answer was no, and he was just waiting for the excuse to throw this guy out. Keanu stopped, but he didn't look intimidated. He just looked tired. He shifted the weight of his bag, his gloved hand gripping the strap tight. He blinked a few times, clearly confused by the aggression. He was used to people opening doors for him, or at least nodding respectfully as he passed. This was new territory. "I'm going in," Keanu said quietly. His voice was rough, like he hadn't had water in hours. He gestured vaguely toward the open doors behind the guard. "I'm staying here." The guard let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a dismissive sound, the kind someone makes when they hear a joke that isn't funny. He shook his head, crossing his arms over his chest. "Not tonight, you're not," he snapped. "We have a private event. The hotel is closed to the public. Unless you have a reservation for the gala, you need to keep moving." Keanu paused. He looked past the guard into the lobby. It looked quiet to him. He knew the schedule of the hotel fairly well, and he didn't remember a gala that would lock out the residents. But he wasn't the type to argue about rules. He just wanted to get to his room. He decided to try a different approach, thinking maybe the guard was new or just confused. "I actually live here," Keanu said, trying to be as polite as possible. He kept his tone level, trying to de-escalate the tension before it even started. "I have a suite upstairs. I'm just checking in." The guard's eyebrow shot up. He looked Keanu up and down one more time, his eyes lingering on the scuffed boots and the duffel bag. It was impossible for him to believe that the man standing in front of him, looking like a backpacker on a budget, actually owned a multi-million-dollar suite in one of the most expensive hotels in the city. In the guard's mind, appearances were everything. Rich people looked rich. They didn't carry heavy bags, they had porters for that. They didn't wear beat-up leather jackets, they wore Italian wool coats. "Right," the guard said, dragging the word out sarcastically. "Listen, pal, I've heard every line in the book. I'm meeting a friend. I left my key inside. I live here. It's all the same story, you're not coming in." The embarrassment of the situation was starting to prick at Keanu, but he kept his cool. He knew who he was, and he knew that getting angry wouldn't solve anything. He just wanted to go to sleep. He decided to show proof. He let go of the strap of his bag and reached into his jacket pocket. "If I can just show you my ID," Keanu started, his hand moving slowly toward his wallet. The moment Keanu moved his hand, the guard's demeanor shifted instantly from annoyance to defensive aggression. He didn't see a man reaching for a wallet. He saw a potential threat. He took a half step forward, invading Keanu's personal space, and put his hand up, palm out. "Whoa, back up," the guard barked, his voice booming so loudly that a few people walking by on the sidewalk stopped to look. "Don't reach into your pockets. Keep your hands where I can see them." Keanu froze. He slowly pulled his hand out of his pocket, holding it up in a peaceful gesture. "Whoa, okay," he said softly. "I was just getting my key card. I'm not armed, it's just a wallet." The guard didn't seem to hear him. The adrenaline was pumping now. He felt like he was in control, like he was protecting the hotel from a dangerous intruder. He puffed out his chest, enjoying the power dynamic. He liked that people were watching. It made him feel important. "I don't care what you have," the guard said, his voice dropping to a low, threatening growl. "I told you this is a private event. You are trespassing. You need to leave the premises right now, or I am going to have to call the police." The mention of the police caught the attention of a doorman who was standing nearby, helping a woman with a diamond necklace out of a taxi. The doorman looked over, his eyes widening as he recognized the face under the baseball cap. He started to step forward, opening his mouth to say something, but the guard snapped his head around. "I got this, Jerry. Stay focused on your car," the guard shouted. The doorman hesitated, looking between the guard and Keanu, then shrank back, clearly afraid of getting into trouble with his aggressive coworker. Keanu stood his ground, but his shoulders slumped a little more. He felt a deep sense of sadness wash over him. It wasn't about being insulted. He was used to people underestimating him. It was about the lack of basic human decency. Here he was, a man who had given millions to charity, a man who treated everyone with respect, being treated like a criminal on the sidewalk in front of his own home. The irony wasn't lost on him, but it didn't make it hurt any less. "Look," Keanu said, his voice barely audible over the sound of the city traffic. "I'm not causing any trouble. I just want to go upstairs. Is there a manager you can ask? Just ask anyone inside." "I am the authority out here," the guard said, pointing a finger toward the street. "And I'm telling you to leave. You're blocking the entrance. You're bothering the guests. Take your bag and get lost. Don't make me say it again." He stepped forward again, forcing Keanu to take a step back onto the cold pavement. The boundary had been crossed. Keanu was no longer on the red carpet. He was back on the street, just another member of the public the guard was sworn to keep out. The guard smiled, a smug, satisfied smile. He thought he had won. He thought he had done his job perfectly, protecting the rich and beautiful from the scruffy outsider. He had no idea that he had just made the biggest mistake of his career, and that the entire internet would soon be dissecting this exact moment. But for now, in the cold night air, he just felt powerful. The wind whipped around the corner of the building, cutting through the leather jacket and chilling the skin, but Keanu didn't shiver. He stood frozen on the edge of the sidewalk, the toes of his boots barely touching the red carpet he had been forced off of. The security guard loomed over him, a wall of muscle and arrogance, vibrating with the need to exert dominance. The traffic on the avenue roared like a distant ocean, but the space between the two men was deadly silent, filled only with the guard's heavy, impatient breathing. Keanu looked at the ground for a moment, gathering his thoughts. He felt a strange mix of emotions. There was anger, of course, a hot spike of indignation at being treated like a criminal, but mostly he just felt exhausted. He had been traveling for days, moving from one film set to another, living out of suitcases and hotel rooms. He didn't have the energy for a pissing contest with a security guard who was clearly having a bad night. He just wanted to lay his head on a pillow. He decided to try one last time, keeping his voice as calm and steady as he could, refusing to rise to the bait. "Listen," Keanu said, looking the guard directly in the eyes. His gaze was intense but not angry. "I understand you're doing your job. You think I'm someone I'm not. But if you just call the front desk, or if you let me walk to the counter, they will tell you who I am. My name is Keanu. I have a residence here." He said his name clearly, hoping the sound of it would trigger something. It was a name that had been on billboards all over the world, on movie posters, and on the lips of millions of fans. But to the guard, it meant nothing. The guard just sneered, shaking his head like a disappointed parent scolding a child. "I don't care who you say you are," the guard spat, taking another step forward, forcing Keanu back toward the curb. "I don't care if you're the King of England, you're not coming in." Do you understand English? You are trespassing. You are a nuisance. And I am done wasting my breath with you. The guard reached for the radio clipped to his shoulder, his finger hovering over the button. I'm calling the police. Let's see how tough you are when you're spending the night in a cell. The threat hung in the air, heavy and serious. Calling the cops was a line that, once crossed, changed everything. It turned a misunderstanding into a legal mess. It would mean handcuffs, a station, and a mugshot. It would mean headlines, though not the kind the hotel was used to. By now, the scene hadn't gone unnoticed. The hotel entrance was a busy place, and a confrontation involving a shouting security guard always draws a crowd. People who were waiting for their cars or just walking by began to slow down. They formed a semicircle around the scene, intrigued by the drama. A couple in evening wear stopped whispering to each other and stared openly. A taxi driver idling at the curb craned his neck to see what was happening. At first, the whispers were just background noise, static in the air. People murmured about the crazy guy or the homeless man causing trouble. They looked at Keanu's scruffy clothes and his heavy bag, and they made the same assumption the guard had made. They saw a problem, not a person. But then a young woman stepped out of a rideshare car. She was dressed casually, wearing a hoodie and sneakers, and she wasn't looking at the guard. She was looking at the man being yelled at. She squinted, her eyes going wide. She grabbed her friend's arm, squeezing it tight. "Oh my God," she whispered, though in the sudden lull of the argument her voice carried. "That looks like—" "Is that Keanu Reeves?" Her friend laughed, dismissing it. "No way. Keanu Reeves wouldn't be getting yelled at by a security guard. He owns half the city." "No, look at his face," the girl insisted, pulling out her phone. She held it up not to record the guard, but to zoom in on the man in the baseball cap. The realization began to ripple through the crowd like a wave. It started with the young woman, then moved to the couple in the evening wear. The woman gasped, covering her mouth with her gloved hand. "It is him," she whispered to her husband. "I'd know that profile anywhere. Why is that man screaming at him?" Cameras began to rise. Smartphones were held aloft, recording the encounter. The blue light of screens illuminated the surprised faces of the onlookers. The mood of the crowd shifted instantly. Just moments ago, they had been watching a security guard do his dirty work, removing an unwanted guest. Now they were witnessing a gross injustice. They were watching a beloved icon, a man known for his kindness and humility, being publicly humiliated by someone who didn't know any better. The security guard, however, was completely oblivious. He saw the phones come out and interpreted it entirely wrong. He thought the crowd was filming him doing his job. He thought they were capturing the moment he protected the hotel from a trespasser. It puffed his ego up even more. He stood taller, puffing out his chest, putting on a show for his invisible audience. "You see this?" the guard shouted to the people watching, gesturing aggressively at Keanu. "This is what happens when you try to sneak in." "We don't want your kind here," a few people in the crowd booed. It was a low sound, disapproving and rumbling. The guard frowned, confused by the reaction. He looked around, blinking. Why were they booing him? He was the hero of this story. He turned his attention back to Keanu, his face flushing red with anger. "You think this is funny?" the guard yelled, misinterpreting the look of patient sadness on Keanu's face. "You think you're being smart? You're just making it worse for yourself." Keanu didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at the phones. He kept his eyes on the guard. He could see the beads of sweat forming on the man's forehead. He could see the pulse throbbing in the man's neck. He realized that there was no logic here, no reasoning that would work. This man was trapped in his own worldview, a worldview where a man in a leather jacket was a criminal and a man in a uniform was a king. The embarrassment of it washed over Keanu again, but this time it was mixed with a profound sense of pity for the guard. How sad it must be, Keanu thought, to go through life seeing enemies everywhere, to be so ready to fight. Keanu took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. He watched as the guard unclipped his radio and brought it to his lips. "Dispatch!" the guard barked into the radio, his eyes locked on Keanu with a triumphant glare. "I have a male suspect at the front entrance, refusing to leave, trespassing. I need a unit here immediately." "Yes, I'll detain him until you get here." Keanu stood there, the cold wind ruffling his hair under the cap. He heard the words "detain him" and felt a knot form in his stomach. This was really happening. He was going to be handcuffed on the sidewalk in front of his own home. He looked at the hotel lobby one last time through the glass doors. He could see the chandelier sparkling inside, the calm, luxurious world just a few yards away, but it might as well have been on the moon. The guard smirked, thinking he had won. He lowered the radio and cracked his knuckles, stepping closer to Keanu, ready to grab his arm if he tried to run. "Game's over, pal," he whispered, thinking he was delivering the final line in a movie where he was the star. "You're going away for a long time." He had no idea that the tables were about to turn in the most spectacular way possible. He had no idea that the game was just beginning, and he had already made the losing move. The tension on the sidewalk was tight enough to snap. The security guard, feeling the eyes of the crowd and the weight of the authority he thought he possessed, took a step closer to Keanu. He reached out a hand, his fingers hovering inches away from Keanu's arm, ready to grab him and restrain him until the police arrived. The wind whistled through the buildings, making the moment feel colder and sharper. The crowd held its collective breath, phones still raised, capturing the injustice in real time. Keanu didn't flinch. He didn't pull away. He just stood there, a solitary figure of calm in the center of a storm he didn't create. Just as the guard's fingers were about to make contact, the heavy glass doors of the hotel swung open with such force that they banged against the stops. A man in a pristine suit rushed out. He was older than the guard, with gray hair and a face that was currently twisted in absolute panic. It was the general manager, a man who had been running the hotel for over a decade. He had been in the back office, reviewing the night's roster, when the frantic whispers of the front desk staff and the commotion outside had drawn his attention. He had looked out the window, seen the scene, and his heart had nearly stopped. He sprinted across the marble threshold, nearly tripping over the carpet in his haste. "Stop! Stop it right now!" he screamed, his voice cracking with desperation. The security guard froze, his hand dropping to his side. He turned, confused and annoyed by the interruption. He looked at his boss, expecting a nod of approval for handling a difficult situation. "Sir, I have it under control," the guard said, puffing out his chest. "This guy was trespassing. He refused to leave. I've already called the police." The manager didn't even look at him. He brushed past the guard as if he were invisible and stopped directly in front of Keanu. The change in the atmosphere was instant. The aggressive energy vanished, replaced by a wave of horror and deep respect. The manager's face went pale as he looked at the man in the baseball cap. "Mr. Reeves," the manager breathed out, his voice trembling. "Oh my God, Mr. Reeves, are you all right? I am so sorry." The name hung in the cold air like a lightning bolt. "Mr. Reeves," the security guard blinked. He looked from his boss's terrified face to the man in the scruffy jacket. The gears in his head began to turn, grinding slowly. He knew that name. Everyone knew that name, but it couldn't be. He looked back at the duffel bag, the scuffed boots, the simple cap. It didn't fit, it didn't make sense, but the manager was apologizing. The manager was practically shaking. Keanu let out a small, weary sigh. He adjusted his cap, offering the manager a faint, forgiving smile. "I'm okay," Keanu said softly. "Just trying to get to my room." The manager reached out as if to touch Keanu's arm to reassure himself, but thought better of it and pulled his hand back. Of course, please come inside." This is unforgivable." He turned sharply toward the security guard, and the look on his face was pure fury. The kind fatherly figure was gone, replaced by a stern boss who had seen his hotel's reputation nearly destroyed in 30 seconds. "What is the matter with you?" the manager shouted, his voice echoing off the glass facade. "Do you know who this is? This is Keanu Reeves. He owns a suite here." "He is a guest." The guard took a step back, his confidence melting away like ice in the sun. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. He looked at Keanu again, really looked at him, and for the first time, he saw the familiar face that he had watched on movie screens for years. The realization hit him like a physical punch to the stomach. He hadn't just stopped a random homeless guy. He hadn't just kicked out a nobody. He had manhandled one of the most famous and beloved actors in the world, and he had done it on the sidewalk in front of 50 cameras. I didn't," the guard stammered, his face turning a deep shade of crimson. He looked like I was just doing my job. The manager was having none of it. "You just assaulted a resident?" he yelled, not caring that the crowd was recording every word. You threatened to arrest him. Get inside. Now you are done here. I want your badge and your radio on my desk in 5 minutes. The guard looked like he was going to be sick. He glanced at the crowd. They were no longer just watching. They were laughing, pointing, and shaking their heads. The smugness he had felt only moments ago had transformed into utter humiliation. He felt small, smaller than he had ever felt in his life. He realized that his power had been an illusion, and he had just used it to pick a fight with a giant. He shrank away, ducking his head and moving quickly toward the employee entrance, unable to face Keanu or the angry manager any longer. The manager watched him go, his chest heaving, trying to compose himself. He turned back to Keanu, his expression softening again, filled with apology. "Please, sir," he said, gesturing toward the open doors. "Let me get you upstairs. I will send up some champagne dinner, whatever you want, on the house. Please accept our deepest apologies." Keanu looked at the open doors. He looked at the manager, who was clearly stressed out of his mind. Then he looked at the crowd. They were cheering now, a gentle ripple of applause. He saw the young girl who had recognized him earlier. She gave him a thumbs up. He felt a sense of relief wash over him. The ordeal was over. The truth was out. He wasn't a criminal, he was just a guy trying to go home. But as he prepared to step into the lobby, he remembered the guard. He remembered the look of pure terror on the young man's face when he realized he was about to be fired. The anger that the manager felt was justified, but Keanu felt something different. He didn't want to be the reason someone lost their livelihood, not over a mistake, even a stupid one. "Hold on," Keanu said, putting a hand on the manager's shoulder to stop him from guiding him inside. The manager froze, worried that Keanu was going to yell or sue or demand the guard be thrown onto the street. Instead, Keanu looked toward the door where the guard had disappeared. "Don't fire him," Keanu said, his voice quiet but firm. The manager looked at Keanu as if he had suddenly started speaking a foreign language. His mouth opened slightly, his eyes wide with disbelief. The cold wind blew a stray leaf across the pavement between them, but the manager didn't even blink. He couldn't process what he had just heard. "Don't fire him," the manager repeated, his voice rising in pitch. "Mr. Reeves, did you hear the way he spoke to you? He threatened to arrest you. He humiliated you in front of all these people. If we keep him on, it sends a message that this kind of behavior is acceptable. I have to make an example of him. I cannot apologize enough, but I have to let him go." Keanu shook his head slowly. He shifted the weight of his duffel bag, his face calm and serene. There was no anger in his eyes, only a deep, quiet wisdom. "Look," he said softly, glancing toward the door where the guard had vanished. "He was doing what he thought was right. He was protecting the hotel. He just made a mistake. He saw a guy in a hoodie and a heavy bag, and he made a call. It was the wrong call, yeah, but do we really want to ruin his life because of it? It's almost the holidays. Everyone deserves a second chance." The manager stood there, stunned. He was used to celebrities making demands. He was used to people wanting heads to roll when they felt insulted. He had expected shouting, legal threats, or a cold demand for compensation. He had not expected mercy, not like this. It was a level of grace that he rarely saw in his line of work, where ego usually ruled the day. "Are you sure?" the manager asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Because if you want him gone, he is gone. I don't care who his uncle is or how long he's been here." "I'm sure," Keanu said firmly. "Just talk to him, explain it to him, but let him keep his job. No one needs to lose their job tonight." The manager took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. He nodded, a look of profound respect crossing his face. "Okay," he said, "if that is what you want. That is very generous of you, truly." He turned and walked back to the employee door, opening it and speaking quietly to someone inside. A moment later, the security guard stepped out. He looked like he was walking to the electric chair. His head was down, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He couldn't meet the manager's eyes. He assumed he was coming out to get his final check and be escorted off the premises in front of the crowd that hated him. "The resident has asked me not to terminate your employment," the manager said, his voice stern but lacking the earlier fury. The guard's head snapped up. His eyes were wide, filled with confusion. "What? Mr. Reeves says you were just doing your job," the manager continued, crossing his arms. "I personally disagree with his assessment of your character and judgment, but he is the guest, and his word stands here." You are on your thinnest possible ice. One more slip-up and you are out. Do you understand me? Yes, the guard breathed, his voice shaking. Yes, sir, thank you, thank you. Now go apologize, the manager ordered, stepping aside. The guard turned toward Keanu. The arrogance was completely gone, evaporated by the realization of how close he had come to disaster. He looked at Keanu with a mixture of shame and awe. He saw the man he had tried to bully standing there, quiet and humble, holding a bag that probably cost more than the guard's car. The guard walked over, his steps hesitant. He stopped a few feet away, not wanting to invade Keanu's space again. Sir, the guard choked out, I don't know what to say. I am so sorry. I didn't recognize you. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Keanu looked at him. He didn't gloat. He didn't say, I told you so. He just offered a small, genuine smile. He reached out a hand, the same hand the guard had thought was reaching for a weapon just 10 minutes ago. It happens, brother, Keanu said, gripping the guard's hand and giving it a firm shake. Just be careful next time. You never know who you're talking to. Keep your head up. The guard nodded vigorously, trying to hold back tears. He shook Keanu's hand, then quickly stepped back, moving to the side of the door to open it properly this time, holding it with both hands as if he were guarding a palace. Please go in, the guard said, his voice thick with emotion. Keanu nodded at him. Thanks. He turned and walked through the doors, the warm air of the lobby washing over him. The difference in atmosphere was instant. The marble floors gleamed, the chandelier sparkled, and the smell of expensive flowers filled the air. The staff behind the front desk, who had been watching nervously, immediately straightened up. They didn't see a scruffy traveler anymore. They saw the man who had just shown more class than anyone else in the building. The manager rushed to his side as he walked toward the elevators. Mr. Reeves, please, he said, gesturing vaguely. Dinner is on us. The chef is preparing your favorite meal. We can send up a bottle of the best wine we have. Anything to make up for this terrible night? Keanu stopped at the bank of elevators and pressed the button. He turned to the manager, shaking his head. I really just appreciate the ride up, he said. I'm tired. I just want to wash up and sleep. I'm good for food, really, but thank you. The manager looked disappointed but accepted the refusal. If you change your mind, just call down. Anything at all. The elevator bell dinged and the polished silver doors slid open. It was empty, quiet, and peaceful. Keanu stepped inside, turning around to face the lobby. The manager, the now silent guard, and the desk staff were all watching him. He gave a small, two-finger salute as the doors began to slide shut. Have a good night, everyone, he said. As the elevator ascended, taking him away from the drama and the noise, the lobby remained silent for a long moment. The buzz of the city outside seemed far away. The manager looked at the guard, who was still standing by the door looking down at his shoes. You got lucky tonight, son, the manager said quietly. That man is a better person than any of us will ever be. Outside, the crowd on the sidewalk began to disperse. The phones were lowered. The people who had been ready to attack the guard for his rudeness were now shaking their heads in amazement. They hadn't just seen a celebrity. They had seen a master class in how to treat people. They had watched a man who had every right to be angry choose kindness instead. The story wouldn't end there, of course. By morning, the videos would be everywhere. The headline wouldn't be, Keanu Reeves yells at security guard. It would be something different. It would be about the actor, the $380 million hotel, and the quiet moment on a cold sidewalk where a superstar proved that real class isn't about how much money you have, but how you treat the people who don't recognize you. High above the city in his quiet suite, Keanu dropped his bag on the floor. He sat on the edge of the bed and took off his boots. He rubbed his face, letting out a long breath. It had been a strange night, a painful and embarrassing night, but as he laid back and closed his eyes, he didn't feel angry. He just felt glad that it was over and that somewhere down below, a young man who made a mistake still had a job. And for Keanu, that was enough.